Well, good evening, all. Mayor, Council, welcome. Councilor Gonzalez, this is your first council work session on the budget or your first budget process.
Thank you.
We have not done this meeting in a few years prior to the pandemic. I don't think we did one at all during the pandemic. The work session?
Budget work.
Meeting.
Yeah, but with this, so we started this work session. You scared me. I know my memory's not great, but so we started this concept of having this meeting because there's times before we finalize the proposed budget that we have some policy questions sometimes we need to ask, but just to give you an update, give you the opportunity to ask questions before we get into the actual proposed budget and the budget committee. We have to be careful what we talk about. So we'll be very high level tonight because local budget law doesn't allow us to talk specifics and talk the dollars until we deliver the budget message and hand the budget out to the budget committee. So we'll be keeping things very high level tonight. But this gives you an update of kind of where things are at, kind of how we got to where we're at, kind of where we go through the process. And then I've added a few other things to tonight's agenda. One, I think I told everybody that we did our bond sale for the Parks bond this morning. So I'll give you an update on that, and I'll just give you a little preview. I'm going to have the best news up front. Just a quick little update on the ARPA dollars and kind of what we've spent to date and what we've committed and kind of what's left, and then what we're going to be kind of looking at going forward. Washington County was here talking to you the other night. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about the opioid settlement money that we are allocated or estimated to get over the next 18 years. And I'll get into that. So I thought we'd give you that update and have the opportunity to kind of talk about whether it's something you're interested in allocating some over to Washington County for the project or what we want to do. So that could be a discussion that we could have tonight. Of course, we can't make any decisions on it, but just give you the opportunity to see what the money dollars will look like and what you might want to do. And then I will get into the 23-24 budget process, kind of how we got here again, some of the things we got in there, and where we're at. So with that, let's get into the Parks bond update. So we thought we'd give it an opportunity. So back on March 16th, we gave our presentation to Moody's for our bond rating. And the team that we had put together for that presentation was Sherilyn, Megan, myself, Matt Warner, our assistant finance director, Ross Hoover, our Parks and Rec director. And then we had two people from our underwriting firm and our financial advisors. That's Carol Samuels, the managing director. Some of you may recognize that name. I've had her come here and talk to you about PERS in the past. She's one of our state PERS nerds as well as property tax nerds. She's a managing partner with Piper Sandler. And then Joe Wilson is one of their associates, has done a lot of work on our bond sale. And then Joseph Manolius was the gentleman from Moody's that we presented to. So I picked some of the pieces out of that presentation to kind of show you what we presented to them. The highlights were that, we have robust and growing fund balances. We have a large, diverse economy. Bridgeport Village have gone through some significant improvements. Our lodging taxes are higher than even pre-pandemic. So we're seeing the return to that. We've got, high real market values, assessed values. We have a diverse economy. And I've talked about this in the past with council we have a really good mixture of commercial, industrial, and residential, which has helped us over the years when you have one industry that may be kind of going down a little bit, the others may still be thriving, and that helps keep our assessed value growth really positive. Back in 2018, when we went to Moody's and they did their credit opinion, we were close. They gave us a strong AA1 rating, and that was when we had been upgraded to the second highest rating. And they did not give us the AAA rating at that time. And the piece that they were PERS was one of the pieces they were kind of worried about. And I remember back in 2018, the level of PERS was, the funded level was not as high. But their opinion stated a material decline in the city's debt and pension liabilities could lead to an upgrade. So we really wanted to focus on that as well, that we have low debt levels. Gross direct debt was $1,359 per capita, and it's 0.39% of our taxable real market value, including the bonds we were selling. So our debt levels, we were able to show that they are low. On the pension side, we paid off back, as you may remember, we did a $2 million payment to PERS. We had a couple pieces in there. We had a transition liability on the books that years ago, when we went to PERS, we had to buy into the system. And so that was amortized over a number of years. And so we had this liability out there. And the percentage of our rate, our PERS rate, was paying off that liability over time. So we paid that off. And that significantly dropped our rate going forward. And then we had the remaining part with another 800,000 that put towards a side account. And then that's when they had the 25% match that the state was giving on anybody setting up a side account. So we dropped about I think it was like 1.6% of our PERS rate just by those pieces. The transitional liability, since that's gone now, that's going to keep us low going forward. And the side account is dropping our rate, what it would be going forward. So we were able to show that our pension liability had significantly decreased, as well as the PERS system as a whole had been funded better. So we really wanted to point those things out, as we were hoping to get a rate increase or a rating increase. So we showed them, there's a lot of numbers here, and you don't have to focus in on every little piece of that. What we really want to focus on is that our debt is low, and our per capita real market value is exceptionally strong at nearly $350,000. So Lake Oswego is a AAA rated, and they have just a little bit higher than 350. So we thought we were in a really pretty good position by showing that per capita number was high.
That's high compared to everybody else except Lake Oswego.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's it. The per capita R&B has increased over 50% from the last time we went. Again, this is just showing our debt levels low. We have a debt capacity by state law that is 3% of our real market value. We are only with this sale, we are still only at about 11.47% of our debt that we could live. So we have a lot of capacity. Our debt levels are low. We did do so you do remember that the bond was passed at a $25 million authority. Because of the timing of the projects, we have to be able to reasonably expect to spend 85% of our bond proceeds within 3 years. Because some of these projects are further out, we were not able to sell all 25 million because we wouldn't have been able to spend it in that time period. So we made the decision to sell 15 million of the 10 million authority. So our debt capacity still is really low with this 15 million. And then we've got in a couple of years, we'll go back out and sell the remaining $10 million. This was just some slides to show them, again, our pension liability down. You can see on that, if you can, the numbers are big enough. For 23-25, so we have new PERS rates that'll start July 1st, 2024. If you look between the middle box there and the next art, we're going, for example, in the tier 1, tier 2 from 26.85% of salary to only 28.01. So we are seeing some pretty minimal increases in the contribution rates for PERS in the next 2 years. And those are 2-year rates. So the next upcoming fiscal year, as well as the next budget year after that, will be under these rates. And then the bottom there is the PERS system as a whole, how they're funding, they're better funded than they were before. So we were saying a couple of things you were wanted. Our debt levels are low. Our PERS liability is significantly different. We really showing that we're strong. The economy overview, this was a slide that Sherilyn shared with them. And a couple of the highlights, you can see a number of the things up there, but a couple of things that she pointed out was that we have just about 1,800 businesses in Tualatin, over 30,000 jobs with a $2 billion payroll. We have the latest unemployment numbers at the time. Our unemployment in Tualatin is only 3.7%, which is fairly low. It was definitely lower than the state. Our median household incomes was just about $98,000 as compared to $66,000 for the state. with 46% of our 11,000 households have a median income of over 100,000. So we are a pretty solid, what I'm looking for, affluent community, and that's another piece that Moody's looks at. And, they want to make sure that we can pay back the bonds, that we have strong property values. We have a community that is affluent enough that can pay the rates. It said ours are low, so our levy rate is low, which makes it a lot more affordable for our residents as well. This was just a slide showing our property values are strong. Our real market value has been growing at about a 15.4%, with our assessed value increasing 5%. So again, we're seeing strong growth in our property values, which again shows a strong ability to pay those bonds. So in the conclusion, we pointed out we're already a robust economy, is continuing to grow. We have impressive reserves, and they're only gotten stronger since 2018. We're committed to maintaining a strong financial position. The debt position's low. We've got community affluence, where our pension position is strong. I ended it by saying things were very good in 2018, but they've only gotten better. So what did Moody's do? Well, they kept us at the AA1, which is still outstanding. Definitely, and you can see they say there with the top part I have highlighted, Moody's maintains its outstanding AA1 rating. They were again teetering. We made a strong case for AAA. What they said to us was that when we're back in front of them in a couple of years, it's likely. Good to hear that. I would love to have had it now, but I'm not going to, it's nothing to shake a stick at. A AA1 it's high and very well, puts us in a very good position. The other piece that I think I like there is that the city has positive governance practices, which has supported its strong financial position. The mayor's been in his position or on the council for a number of years. We have the rest of the council strong. Sherilyn's been here 16 years. I've been here 15. We've got some stability, and that's what they like to see, is that there's stability in the management and our financial practices. And that's the direction I get from the council and the people you see out here, the jobs that they do to keep us in a strong position. So let's talk about the bonds. The sale occurred. They put it out to the market at 8 o'clock this morning. It was open for an hour and a half. There were 4 strong factors that were in our favor. We had a good functioning market at this time, so we were in the market at a good time. There weren't that many organ issues lately, and so there were investors that were looking for organ investments. The bonds were general obligations, so they are backed by our taxing authority, and the strength of our credit rating. We reached the subscription level of all our bonds within 36 minutes. Now, they kept it open for 4 hours and a half, but all 100% of our bonds were sold or were committed for in an hour and in 36 minutes. Our overall bond yield was just under 3.5%, which is strong for us. These bonds sold at a premium of about $2.3 million over the $15 million. What that means is after expenses, we have $17.1 million or $17.2 million available for projects on a $15 million bond issue. Yeah, Ross and Rich were very excited. I don't see Ross not here. But Rich, I see Rich is smiling over there. So the many faces of Rich. So we're excited. I got an email from Joe Wilson from Piper Sandler after I had gotten here. But he said a couple key takeaways that you can share with the council. City sold 15 million of their $25 million voter approved general obligation bonds. The bonds were popular with investors, reflecting both the strong credit reputation of the city of Tualatin and the elite credit rating of AA1 from Moody's Investor Services. At the end of the order period, there was over $35.4 million in orders for the $15 million of bonds we were selling. allowing the underwriters, Piper Sandler, to reduce the effective interest rates below the initial levels that they had talked to us about yesterday. As a result, the city locked in a true interest cost of 3.44%. We were able to receive an additional $2.346 million in premium on top of the $15 million of bonds sold. We're very happy, and I think it's just, it goes to show, again, the strong financial position of the city, with the strong governance that you guys provide, as well as what the rest of the organization does to keep us strong. We can go to Moody's, we can prove that to them, and it shows in our rate. Just a little bit, one last little piece. So our levy rate, when we went to the voters, we stated in the measure that the tax rate is estimated to increase 29 cents per thousand of assessed taxable value. The first 2 years, that levy rate increased by that amount. What you'll start to see is then it starts to drop a little bit. So what the orange so the blue is the bonds we sold today. The darker gray and gray in there is the 2018 transportation bonds, and you'll see that those are going to fall off here in a couple of years. The orange is the estimate of the rate of the bonds we're going to sell in a couple of years. So this got structured in such that until such time as the 2018 bonds fall off, we're going to stay at a level levy rate for the next few years. And then you see a significant drop when the 2018 bonds come off. And that allows, if it gives us flexibility, if there's something else, another infrastructure need or some other need we might have in the future, we're set up with a good spot where we only have a low levy rate starting out in a few years. So that's how the bonds were structured, and that's so the levy rate is exactly what we said. I told the voters we were going to be at. Any questions before I move off the bond sale?
Okay, you got that 3 point something rate and the treasuries are going up, and you're like 2 months treasuries are going 4.5. How are you able to get the low rate?
It's the market and the way that, I mean, I can go into a lot of detail, the yield curves and all that, but it's the market, our rate, it's what people, where they're trying to invest it out to, which made it, someone years ago, and I've used this many times, and I've got to find another thing, but we're kind of considered an attractive risk. Yeah. So our challenge a little bit will be what's called arbitrage. The IRS basically doesn't want you going out and borrowing money at 3.4% and then earning 5% or 4%. And so actually the arbitrage yield on this is about 2.9%. So we'll not be able to invest in theory over that amount. Now there's a lot of rules around what the arbitrage calculations and rules, but we do have a consultant, an arbitrage consultant on board. And we also have our investment advisors. So I'll be setting up a meeting with them in the next probably week or so to sit down to come up with a strategy for investing so we can maximize the earnings. It all means if that rate does go up it's average over the 5 years, first 5 years. If at the end of the 5 years we've earned more than we're allowed to earn, then we have to pay the difference to the IRS. So it's not awful, but we just want to be able to maximize the investment earnings. But because of that environment, we do have to be a little careful.
Councilor Reyes has joined us by Zoom. She's been with us by Zoom. And she asked that everybody speak into the mic, and that if you could repeat the question when it comes up.
Okay.
She can hear you well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
At that, I'll move on to the American Rescue Plan Act. So we have received just under $6.2 million. It was in 2 tranches, and we did receive both. Last August, we received the last half. We've spent about $444,000 to date. You recall we did some premium pay for employees that had to work during the pandemic, so forth. So we've spent some to date. We do have 3 commitments that we've talked with council about. The $1 million for the water line that's needed for Planbeck Gardens. And that was just, you approved the loan agreement at your meeting on Monday night that kind of kicks in that process. But we won't actually distribute the money until they put that water line in, and it's up to $1 million. There's a section, a flag lot that has been purchased adjacent to Planbeck Gardens that we're gonna be putting up some park amenities or some trail on top. That's about $250,000, so that's eligible for ARPA funds. And then we've talked about the Stone Ridge Park renovation. So the design and construction of that's about 2.75 million. So that leaves us with about 1.75 available to be allocated. It needs to be committed by the end of next calendar year. And then we actually have to expend those monies by December of 2026. So we're looking at opportunities for infrastructure, outdoor facilities projects, some things that we've been doing recently that would qualify. Some of the park equipment that's going in at Equality would qualify. So those are things that we might look at and talk to you about. We did the standard allowance for revenue loss as far as the reporting goes. Treasury allowed up to $10 million of revenue loss, which is a standard allowance. And we had the 6.2. We claim that, and what that does is open up funds that can be used for government services, which generally includes any service traditionally provided by the government. So that opens up some other opportunities for some funding opportunities that we'll be looking at as well with that definition. So more to come on that. I just wanted to give you an update of what we received, what we spent, and what we've committed, and kind of how much is still out there that we'll be talking about in the near future. Good. I'll let you.
Maybe. When we were in DC, I was kind of surprised to learn that ARPA funds could be used for grant writers. And so it's just, we were talking about that for around capacity building for, especially because we have this moment right now of historical monies going to city through the Fed. So I was just curious if that was part of the city rules. I mean,
It is something we would definitely want to look at. Sherilyn had mentioned that you brought that to her attention the other night, and I think I see how it's being qualified in the rules, and so it is something that will definitely be looked at. I think a lot of it comes under that government services. That's kind of where I see it more spelled out, a more comfort level. The way that when ARPA was passed and the final rules were in place, it is somewhat vague. And they purposely did that so that it's more flexible than CARES Act was, so that we can be more nimble and responsive in areas. So.
So at NLC, we're at Capitol Hill, there's quite the discussion of the Republican Congress looking at clawing back money. We want to make sure we stick to the deadline or if they adjust it, because they're eager to claw money back in order to keep deficits. All the cities were talking about it. We mentioned it to our representatives. And they said, yes, they are talking about clawing back.
Okay, I would
Make sure if they shift targets on us, that we get it committed in time, that they don't come back and take it away.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know.
All the other cities are shocked we haven't spent our money yet. Surrounding cities have spent it.
Yeah.
You buy a printing press?
I will keep an eye on that. This is the last, not that long ago, got appointed to the NLC's Fair Committee, the Finance. Now I remember what the A is for us, and then and intergovernmental relations. Why I'm not remembering the A, and so I'm assuming that'll come up. We have a meeting this, so I wasn't able to go to DC for the first meeting, but they have one this summer, so I'll definitely follow up with our committee. Yeah, I'll check with the legislative directors, our oversight, so I'll check with him. But thank you for that heads up. A little bit about the opioid. I don't know why that's hard for me to say tonight. Settlements. There are 7 settlements to date. We've already begun, so you see the 7 across the bottom there, and they are in all different timeframes of when they have to pay the settlement times over. So distributors is over an 18-year period. Janssen's over 11, CVS 10. You can see the rest. Walmart, interesting enough, is at 6 years. Talking to Kristen Burke from Washington County the other night. she was telling me that Walmart wants to just make one payment and be done. So we would probably see that one sooner. We have started receiving the distributors and the J&J settlements, which is the Janssen. Janssen has also been paying up more upfront. We've actually received 5 of the 9 years already. And then, so distributors made their first. The rest of the payments we're anticipating, we'll see those starting this summer. The total expected to be received, I got a spreadsheet from Kristen that we were able to extrapolate how much we think we'll be receiving over that whole time period through July of 2038 at $394,500 is our allocation share. We have received this at the $56,700 to date, and we've been holding that to determine what we wanted to do with it. We have some internal resource things that we want to spend. Some things we're kind of looking at is being able to provide Narcan having supplies to all our officers in the library and places that would be necessary. So we'll definitely want to hold some money aside for things like that. At that, we have not made any other commitments. We're kind of waiting, talking, and also to talk with all of you to see what you want to do. Hillsborough, Cornelius, and Tigard allocate the straight allocation to the county. I wouldn't recommend that we do that. If we are going to do anything to the county, we need to come up with some other way of doing it and then send it off. But, so I didn't know if there was a discussion that want to be had tonight, or just throw that out and have it in your minds, and then I'm going to leave it up to you, Mayor. If you want us to come back and have a discussion at some later time, or okay. So there's the information. We'll put it on a time frame. Come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see there, it's not that much money in the big scope, in the big scheme of things. And it's not projected to come in until, for like 12 more years. So, or 2038. So we have plenty of time to kind of think about it, but I do think the county made a really good case for sending some of our funds. I don't know how much it would be, but so that we have some, I'm going to call it skin in the game for our settlement dollars in that CAT facility and programs. And I just personally think it's a really good use of our settlement dollars. Not all of them, but a chunk of them.
You have numbers attached to like where they're supplying Narcan to all our villages would be to your things like that. So we could have some numbers to this.
Yeah, I know there's some things that are going on, trying to figure out how we get it, what those costs would be. So we'll have more information. When we get back.
And I'm curious about, especially with the county resource and referral, supplemental resource and referral, for people that live in this area, and how we can. Well, it's transport for education. And have workers that are here and have strength with the police department. There's a lot of different kinds of things. So I think the resource and referral inspections is
That's
something
the
that's really
point,
interesting.
because I really believe that the people that are outreaching it really.
Yeah, the interplay of that burn program and all of the Measure 110 dollars, the interplay there.
And the overlapping consideration for Clackamas County.
Yeah.
Residents there, I think we have to, are they gonna come ask as well, and how are we gonna handle that?
So I'm going to start to get into the budget. I realized that I neglected to do one thing that I thought would probably be a good idea, is to have everybody around the room introduce themselves. Especially like, Councilor Gonzalez doesn't know, I'm sure a number of the people in the room. Sure. This is the estimate for how much each, so that's the cumulative total of the different settlements that come in each year. That's from as I understand, the numbers that I was getting.
Yeah.
They would only get this money throughout the year.
As it comes in.
So it'd just be But as the federal dollars come in, we're not gonna write the check.
No.
It would just be a reallocation, and when we get it, we would have, however we, yeah, no, we wouldn't set anything up front, unless obviously the council chose to do something like that, but that's not what I'm proposing to do. All right, well, so as they've all been sitting here patiently wanting to introduce themselves, I'm now getting to that. So I'm gonna start with Matt, and then we'll go around the room. Let's go back to Andy. Let's go to Steve and down that way.
Assistant Community Development Director. I am Mike McCarthy, I'm the city engineer.
Rich Mueller, Parks Planning and Development Manager.
I'm Geiger, Parks Maintenance Manager.
Courtney. Thank you all. My apologies. I was thinking that, it's like, I should probably do that up front. Not everybody knows all the great staff we have here tonight. Let's get into the budget. As I mentioned earlier, that we are restricted by what we can discuss by state budget law until it's delivered and released to the budget committee, which we'll do on May 8th. So in general, basically the general rules on it is we cannot talk specific dollars of what's in the budget. We can talk big picture, we can talk generic, generally what something looks like. And so that's the information we'll talk about tonight and how I'll present. Our budget process here at the city is, we started this year with what I call this year the extravaganza. We do a budget kickoff every year in January. And I've had to try to find different things to call it because it's kind of the same message each time, the same stuff. So I can try to keep it entertaining or make people want to come. They still didn't want to come, but we made them think it was going to be some wild extravaganza. The departments put in their requests. So we can do the kickoff in mid-January. We give them until the 1st of March. So I think this year was March 2nd, to put their budgets into our budget software system, which is called Questica. They had any ad package requests, put those in as well, so we could review them. They're in the budget document. You'll see the descriptions, highlights, goals, and performance measures. They give those to us by that point as well. We have all that put together. I then take a couple weeks with my staff to put everything together so that by the time we're going to have these department meetings, we spend a week in, I think it was the 3rd week of March this year. Carolyn, Matt, and I sit down and meet with every department individually and then talk about their budgets. We don't go line item by line item. We have no desire to have them tell us how many pencils they're going to buy. We try to keep it high level, but we kind of give them the opportunity, and it gives us the opportunity to find out what are the wonderful things they're doing with their budget dollars and what are they proposing to do in the upcoming year. It's a really good opportunity for us to have some great conversations. It's something that you started your first year here, or about time I started. And it's one of the weeks of the year that I look forward to the most. And I know everybody in this room looks forward to it as well. We don't grill them. We tell them we're going to, but we don't. But it's a really good opportunity. And I think Sherilyn feels the same way, that it's a great week for us. So those department meetings were held a few weeks ago. Get ready for this. Meaning the rest of it's, our work session. That's where we're at in the process now. The budget committee will be finalizing anything that decisions or anything I hear coming out of this meeting tonight. We'll wrap up. We'll send the budget to the printer by the end of this month. We'll have the binders all ready on May 8th when we hold the first budget committee meeting. We're hijacking your work session on your first meeting in May, and that'll be the budget committee meeting. Not everybody, I think, was here. Maybe everybody was here when I talked about that we have 2 new members and a student member this year. I think they'll be a great addition to our budget committee. And I'm really looking forward to the process. And then you'll see it, your second meeting in June, I'll be back in front of you to formally adopt the budget. So a little bit talk about the revenues, kind of how we project. Does anybody recognize the meme that I threw in there? Tell us.
I actually saw it David for the new show we just did in Boston.
You were
Amazing
listening.
The Talking Heads. Yeah. I actually had a little video for the budget meeting, so I took that out. But how did we get here? Yes, I know. Sorry. Oh, I'll be extravagant for the budget committee. So I wanted to kind of talk about our revenues and kind of how we go about projecting them. So we have what are called our dedicated revenues. Those are all our utility funds. The monies we get for those are dedicated to those systems. We can't use water funds to pay for anything in the parks. We can't use sewer funds to pay, for the police department. We also have our parks and road utility funds. And those are fees that the council passed, and those are dedicated as well by ordinance for those purposes. Our building permits are kept in a separate fund in our building fund, because under state law, building permit fees are restricted for a building inspection program. Now, there are some other revenues in there that are kind of unrestricted, but basically the building revenues are restricted to the building purposes, so we have a separate fund to keep those separated. And then, of course, our system development charges, those are all restricted for the uses of those utilities. The rest of our revenues, for the most part, are unrestricted. They're our general revenues, and in the general fund, we split those out between our one-time revenues and our ongoing revenues. And we've talked about that we only spend one-time or ongoing revenues for our ongoing expenditures. If you try to use your one-time revenues for that, it's not sustainable, because at some point you're going to run out of those one-times. We look at trends, we look at, so on the utility side, some of those revenues are pretty sad because we only have so many accounts, and especially the flat fees. If it's like the parks utility, $5 per door basically, and we have only so many accounts, that's consistent month to month and year to year. So unless we have rate increases, and then we tie that in. So we factor all those in when we project revenues. The general fund, we do go line by line and look at what we anticipate coming in, and we budget conservatively, but prudently. You don't want to leave too much on the table, but if I'm going to look at a 4% increase in our assessed value, I want to know that I'm going to have at least a 4% assessed value growth, especially property taxes, which are a big chunk of our revenues in the general fund. We need to have a comfort level of what's coming in. So I do budget those fairly conservative. We do look at those, line by line every year. Since we're talking revenues, I do want to kind of give you, talk about the utility rates. I know that you recently had some talk about the water master plan. So the amount that proposed in that is a 12% increase on the water side. On the sewer side, we're split between the regional rate set by Clean Water Services, it's a pass through, and then city council adopts the city rate. Stormwater is the same way. It's a split rate. Our shares are based upon our master plans. And so on the sewer side, it's a 9% increase. And then on the stormwater side, 3%. On the city side, it's the proposal that you'll see in front of you in June when we bring the rate resolution to you. Clean Water is looking at a 4% in both their rates. On the road utility side, that is an indexed rate. A few years back, council put the same indexing that the county uses for the transportation development tax. It's a three-pronged averaged out rate. This year it's 6.01%. And so that's indexed in, and that's what the road utility fees are going up by. And then the parks utility fee, there is no indexing in that, and we're not proposing an increase. So by throwing an average residential bill, so the average is usually used as 8 CCF in a typical residential household. That's factored in the consumption charge in water. And then there's, in the sewer side, it's a wintering average rate based upon for that same CCF. So we have an 8 estimate and assumption in there. So you'll see the different utility rates that are going up. A total residential bill, average bill will go up about $8 per month with these rate increases that are factored in.
Can you just walk through on the slide, so water,
The components.
people are seeing, because it's really hard to see from here.
Okay.
It just
Yeah.
the change of
Um,
our water sewer.
So water, the monthly total, the bill will go up about 37.68 to 42.18 per month. And the water bill is made up of a facilities charge, a service charge, and then the consumption charge of water usage. On the sewer side, again, we have a usage and a base rate. So the monthly total in sewer in the current fiscal year is about 54.42. It'll go up to 57.23, or a $2.81 increase on the sewer side. Stormwater goes from $11.11 per unit to $11.47, or a 36-cent increase on the stormwater side. Road maintenance will go up about 37 cents, from $6.23 to $6.60. There are two components in the road utility fee. There's the pavement maintenance program portion, and then there's a flat fee of all accounts of the sidewalk, street tree, reverse frontage, and that's gonna go up about $4.09. The household for the road utility will go up to $2.51. And then the parks fee, again, this is at 5, and there's not an increase.
Water and sewer, the big.
They're the two big components of the bill anyway, but yes. And sewer is actually the higher of all of them. Sewer is the highest. And clean water makes up the largest portion of that bill.
Yeah, so it's almost half.
I mean, the sewer portion is, it is half of, almost half of, and of that, 3/4 is clean water services.
Any questions?
What does equal CCF? How many, I know that's water consumption. What does that equal to?
I'm gonna look at our engineers, or CCF is, pardon me?
What is 748 gallons?
Thank you.
So that's one CCF.
So one CCF is 700 and some odd gallons. And our average resident uses about 3 CCFs, 6, 7 CCFs.
So an average water bill is about 7 units a month, and a unit is a CCF. So we read our water meters by cubic feet. And a unit is 100.
So 5,200 plus.
Councilor Reyes, were you able to hear all that? No? So the question was, what was a CCF, the equivalent for a CCF? Which was answered at 748 gallons per unit per CCF is 748 gallons. You can't hear her. Andy? Well, we're working on, 'cause we can't hear you.
Oh, and council, could you start the video for the council meeting or in here, Andy? Sorry. Do this first. Counselor, try to say something again.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's continue.
That your new sound, Don.
There's your enthusiasm.
Traffic. Instead of playing music, I will sing and dance for you. No, I won't.
Just guessing, but you probably should keep.
Yes, no doubt.
Let's go ahead and I'm texting her.
Okay.
I don't have a question, but just a comment that thanks to for like 7% increase, what is our typical increase? I know that the water plays a part in that. And I'm not saying we have to do this work, but you know, it'd just be interesting to see our average residential monthly bill, what it looks like an increase for our lower income folks, because I know it's not all fixed. Like the $5. And so I know that might be lower.
We can look and see kind of what a typical lower income uses for, but you know, the usage consumption charge is a little bit higher, but you know, some of these, there's a lot of flat fees on all the utility rates. So that no matter what they use, but we can do some more and maybe for the budget committee, have some more information on that.
And we'll,
Like, what is the typical increase?
Usually 12.
oh, for water, it's been 4.25, but the typical increase, the net change has been in the like $2 to $5.
I think last year was 5. The 12% is a little bit higher this year, dragging that up. But we've been about a $5 the last few years.
And we'll also point out that multifamily typically doesn't pay the utility bill. It goes through the complex or.
I'm just concerned for, I mean, everybody's being hit from all the.
And I will talk about one thing we're proposing in the budget this year that I wanted to talk about related to our low income utility payers. So we'll get to that here in a few minutes.
Councilor Reyes asked that everybody speak into the mic too. Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Hey!
Sorry. I was like pressing all these buttons. I have so many things going on here, like all these monitors and stuff. Sorry, I finally found the audio button.
Okay, good.
I can hear Dawn and I can hear Sherilyn really well. I can't hear the rest of you. So I don't know why. It's probably, I did have a question. I tried to ask the question earlier. So whenever we're ready for more questions, I'll go ahead and ask. But it's going back to the Stone Ridge Park thing. So.
Go ahead and ask. And we'll...
Okay, so I think you said it was costing about 2.75 or 257.
275, correct.
75. Is that from? I think I read something about we received about $6 million. Yours from that's from the COVID or some relief, right?
The
So
ARPA
is that what that 2.7 is coming from?
Yes, it will be paid out of the ARPA funds that we've received.
Okay, so that park is not completely funded by the bond, or am I reading that incorrectly?
Correct. We're going to use ARPA funds instead of the bond funds for that project.
Ah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that was my only question, as it was going by and I'm like, everyone, hello. Thank
Okay.
you.
So on the expenditure side, how we go about looking at our expenditure budget on the personal services side, which is a large percentage of our, especially our general fund budget. We actually look at each position. In our Questica software system, I have each position and the people that are in that position and what benefits they take and so forth. So I have it dialed down. The system does that for me, but we actually have every position by the field position and those costs, and then we put in the assumptions based upon any COLAs, the health and dental. We get the projected amounts. We know for the first 6 months of the year because those rates are already set since insurance comes in place on January 1st. And then city county insurance services, we get the estimate from them in February. We extrapolate that out for the last 6 months, but I can put those in. And so it's fairly dialed down. The system works really well for us to be able to project out and have a pretty solid feel for those personal services numbers. This year, we also had to add in the paid leave organ. So the city pays 0.4% of salary into paid leave organ, and that was a good chunk this year that was added to our personal services category. On the materials and services side, we look for consistency across all the budgets. The direction we gave in the budget preparation in our extravaganza this year was to keep your requested budget for materials and services as flat as possible. We knew it was going to be tighter than in past years, so we asked them to kind of sharpen their pencils, which they're already pretty sharp, but to try to keep them as flat as possible. We knew there was going to be some expenditures that are out of our control, utility rate increases, our 911 dispatch through WACA. I mean, that they tell us what that growth is going to be, and we have to factor that into our budget. But we asked them to kind of look where you could decrease expenditures where possible to offset those. And so that's kind of how we've gone through the material and services side. Capital outlay is where we use our one-time dollars. In the utility funds, you'll see when we get to the budget, you'll see things coming right out of our master plans. In the general fund side, we have a committee made up of representatives from each department that prioritizes our general fund request, because of course we have a lot more needs than we have one-time monies available. So we have a group that gets together and looks at the needs of the organization, not just their department. We've been doing that probably 8 or so years, and it's a great process. I sit in the back of the room and watch others answer questions, and it's the employees that are making the decisions for those CIP dollars in the budget. And then transfers is just those transfers between funds. For example, Carolyn and her department, my department, legal, I mean, we're providing services to all these other departments, but it's all paid out of the general fund. So all those other funds pay their share of those expenditures in the general fund, and those transfers come in. And we also have transfers in, for example, in our utility funds. If we have a water project that is portion of it is eligible to be paid for by STCs, we have the whole amount budgeted in the operating fund, and then that portion that's STC eligible is transferred in from the development funds. So there's a number of transfers you'll see when you go through the budget. Well, all those, we look at into the expenditure. That's how we go forth putting the budget together. We are seeing some increases in revenues, which is a great story. Of course, our property taxes are going up. We are seeing assessed value growth. There are some other areas that we are seeing growth. As we get into the numbers, when we get in the budget committee, I'll highlight more of those others. But for the most part, we're staying stable with some increasing. And then our material and service expenditures are staying pretty flat. I don't have the percentage with me yet. Right now, we're still finalizing a couple pieces of it, but again, it's the departments that came in with just some great work. Their budgets, they're maintaining service levels at the same levels they are continuing providing at. So there's no changes in services, and the levels are not changing. And I think in some areas, the departments are probably increasing a little bit just based upon how they've been able to put their budgets together.
How are we able to do that with the rate of inflation? Especially on like material.
One step we do.
They, again, we've been able to do it within the revenue growth, but they've looked at how they're putting together their budgets. We're seeing the inflation and the supply chain issues mostly on the capital project side. We are seeing it in the material and services, so we are seeing some increases in some areas, but we're also managing it within other areas of that budget. We'll see the detail in a few weeks. We did have some ad package requests. Most of these were one-time initiatives, but there are some ongoing that are factored into this as well. The website needs some redesign. Megan is ecstatic about the fact that we are embarking on this project. So over the next 2 fiscal years, we'll start it in fiscal year 23-24, and it'll likely carry over to 24-25. Just some information, the First City website was spun up in 2007, which seems like way late for some reason, but it was updated in 2012 and refreshed in 2015. Many of the features and behind the scenes infrastructure are outdated, they're clunky. It needs its time. I mean, I think Megan and everybody else that works on the website do a great job of what you see, but it is a difficult process and it needs some refresh. So that's a process that is factored into the budget. You'll see. The climate action plan, there's some implementation to implement the city-led actions and also engaging the public when we get to that point. So there are some dollars that we're programming in for the next stage in the implementation of the climate action plan. The pavement condition index and assessment, we're going to hire a consultant to do a citywide assessment of our PCI and the cost of service analysis. The staff does a great job of going out now and inspecting it and looking at it, but we determined that we really need to have it more dialed in and do a better process and more of a hiring a consultant to help us. So that's factored in the road operating side. Councilor Brooks.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'll be paid for out of the road operating fund. We talked about the bonds and all the wonderful projects, and we'll go into a little more detail when you see the budget of the things that are programmed in. The department's already pretty well at capacity. So we were going to use some bond funds to hire a project manager for these projects, and then also be able to assist in some of the parks utility projects as well and overseeing that. So we talked before, like last year, about the need for even like with the parks utility side, but with the bond passing and the projects that are on the horizon, we'll have that position added in the next fiscal year. In the police side, we're putting together a strategy and figuring out what that will look like as far as what dollars will be needed to recruit and retain our sworn positions. Obviously, we know that it's hiring a new officer is difficult, so we're going to be a little more strategic about it, more aggressive. And so that we have some initiatives that we've been talking with the police department about, and we'll take some funds to do that to kind of help retain and recruit our sworn positions, which obviously is a very important piece of our city. So the utility billing low-income assistance, we are proposing to take some money from the water and sewer funds and set up we're looking into a program for low-income assistance for utility bills. So a couple other cities utilize community action to help assist for low income, and they certify the low income side. What happens now is a lot of people get assistance for energy and other pieces that community action has. This will allow them to have some funds to say, we can also help you with your utility bill. And so we're proposing to put some money into the budget out of the water and sewer funds to help set that program up. We're still working on the details of it as far as how that would work. I need to get in touch with community action to set up how that would work on there, and also kind of find out what magnitude of our residents they're helping on their other assistance programs, so we have an idea. But we've got some placeholders that we're proposing in the budget for this kind of a program. Does that help with your question earlier? Councilor Hillier.
I'm wondering, at one point when Republic Services was here and we were talking about their rate increase, and we I mentioned that some cities offer for senior citizens, or I would assume, low-income residents and all residents, being able to stabilize their billing to just kind of average it out.
Mm.
Is that being considered, or is that something that can be looked at for all of our residents?
I think our system, we'd have to look at I know this came up when we were implementing our utility billing system and that how valid it was gonna be and what the work was gonna be. We'll have to look and see. I look at Mac, he oversees that area.
Yeah, because 54% of our citizens, or community members are under the $100,000 range, and probably a lot of those are senior citizens in a way because of just how Social Security and those particular things work. And I'm pretty concerned about these increases, and I think we need to find ways to make it as livable as possible for these people to live with respect.
I know the problem with some of those programs that we've had or we looked at is you have a set amount each month, but then there's that month that's a true up. And some bill payers will see a spike in that one month, which is really difficult for them. So it's how do you set it up?
I think they average it over a year, and I understand that they take the summer months and all
Yeah.
that, but maybe there's some best practices that other cities are doing. I have no idea.
Yeah, so but we'll look and see what our system
If
can
it's
provide. And,
something that could be considered.
yeah, we'll look and see what we can do and bring that back.
Thank you.
Counselor Reyes has a question.
Counselor Reyes.
Can you hear me now? Is this in addition to what Community Action does, the low income assistance? Or if there's receiving one, then they might not receive the other? Or what are the thought process behind that?
So it would
We-
be, I'll try to look at the camera even though you're behind me.
Yeah,
It would be addition to what they're currently providing, which is the energy assistance and some other low-income assistance that they have fund dollars for. This would be dollars that we would have, so they'd have available to help with the water and sewer bill.
okay, so it will be similar to, for instance, some families pay like the average of like say $100 a month, regardless of what the usage looks like. Or like, I mean, I'm just giving you an example of what I've seen for low income families. And another quick question, how would this be implemented in homes like apartments that some of their water is being, I don't know, maybe it's being distributed based on how many people live within their I guess in the apartment complex, they have a different way of charging water, I'm assuming. So I'm just processing the whole thing out loud. Sorry about that if I'm confusing you.
So we'll be talking with Community Action to find out if that's a viable option for us and how that would look.
Mhm.
So what I'm asking for tonight is just to see if that's something that the council wants me to continue looking at. It is something that's baked into the budget, but we will come back with more details. We're very early on in the process of the proposal. But we will go forward, talk with Community Action, kind of get more magnitude of what this would look like, and then have some more details for the council, because I would be bringing the agreements to you anyway. So once get a little more information, I'll be back in front of you with more details.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Brooks.
First of all, I just want to say thank you. Great. And then the concerns that I have around programming are, if we have those dollars, are they going to be earmarked for our city or Community Action, since it's a large organization? Some of the problems that they had around access. So I'm also curious around, there's another utility bill relief organization through Tigard. I know they only serve Tigard right now, but they might be worth talking with. Remember the name of them? We talked about them in the home. I think it goes through a church or something like that, but they might be a smaller,
Might be,
I can't remember.
St. Anthony.
Same, I can't remember.
check with Tiger to see what.
Yeah, but I just, and then, I know that for the community action, it should cover both of our counties. So, cause I know that's like, but that just came up for me as far as who's easy to work with and how do we get the most bang for our buck for our residents here?
I think our thought is to start there, because they already have the infrastructure in place, they're already qualifying people, they already have people coming to them, getting assistance. And so this would just be one more tool in their toolbox to help the residents say, you have energy assistance I'm helping you with, I give you this assistance, I can also help you with your city of Tualatin.
For it's only guarding our water sewer bill.
Yes, because so they'll have it. How other cities have done this, and this is, so I'm getting the contact name and finding out more, is that they set it aside, this is Tualatin money, but they also have to then let us know who they've serviced, because we have to pay off the bill. So, and then they'll give us a accounting of how much is left in the monies we supplied. So we have some money built in. We don't know those magnitude if that's, I think what we're putting in the budget is probably higher than what we may need, but I don't know what those numbers are yet because we haven't had those conversations.
Because people in apartments don't pay water bills typically, so you're looking at people that are trying to stay in their homes that might be like senior citizens.
Well, what I want to ask community action is if someone comes to them, because maybe they are paying their energy bill in their apartment. If they can supply something that they get from their landlord of what they have to pay for utilities, would that be covered? I don't know how they go about doing that, but it is something we will ask.
Because my concern is like, if people got a discount on their water bill, then they'll just jack up the rent the next year to make up the difference.
Yeah, so I would love to see if we could help people in apartments as much as we can. I just have to, because the landlords typically pay it or the complex pays it, it's built into the rents, and so but we are definitely are interested in having something that can help those people as well, if it can work into the program. That we've had that problem with the CARES Act money and that trying to
Right.
help, because that's not something that's separate.
Thank you. Not to belabor this point, but there is with the Tiger Tualatin School District, they have a service providers meeting that meets every other month. And there are, to Counselor Brooks's point, I'm pretty sure there's a couple different agencies that are already connecting with at least school age, families with school age students. So that might be, Catherine West was the person that she's left this district now, but that might be another resource for you to be able to reach out and find.
I think that's community action. that one.
No, I'm not either, but
I just think, like we do for all of our stuff, for cost of proposals, I think, and I don't know if that.
Yeah, as I said, with the infrastructure being in place, that's we're starting, and then, I mean, we're willing to, look at other avenues, but that's a common point. That's one area we know they've got an infrastructure in place. They're already helping people. Here's another avenue, and then, who knows, we'll go from there, but that's our starting point. The last piece is, we heard at the advance the need for legislative advocacy and grant writing assistance. So the questions we really have tonight is, did you have something definitive in mind? What were you thinking we need? I mean, we're trying to figure out what the scope would be for that. We've done a little bit of research of some consultant firms that might be out there, but we're still trying. So we're proposing to put some money into the budget and continue to look at this, but we're really kind of wanting to get some feedback or some more information that from the advance, from that, what is it that we're really looking at, or what's the need? And I see the mayor nodding, because I know that it was one of your ideas.
The legislative advocacy would be on the state and federal level. There are several well-known lobbying firms, CFM, Thorn Run, in the area that specialize in helping cities out and do this. And they have representatives in DC and in San Diego. When the legislative session is in session in Salem, that'd be where they're more active for a few months, but it's going to be at the federal level. We're trying to get connected with federal dollars, federal programs. uh, And that would tie into the grant writer. They'll be more aware of programs, get the grant written, and they'll, work it through the system. But to me, it's, yeah, it's state and federal level. And we've got several well-known agencies in the area that probably love to do it.
You
And I've
tell the
heard-
selling point.
And I've ever heard anywhere between $65,000 to $100,000 a year that you spend on that.
What did they get?
They get, for example, Sherwood, for what they've spent for their lobbyists, gotten over $7 million in federal grants for their 65,000, 100,000.
When you look, I'm sorry, I know we're gonna talk about the grant writer, but are you looking at someone that would be, in addition to writing grants, be very aware of what's out there and available?
Or a
And-
firm.
Or a firm, and a lot of cities share them too, from what I understand. But when we hear earmarks without even having to do grants and some of the other ways of increasing capacity, it might just be a beautiful thing for our city to increase dollars and not worry about the tax base as much. And then for the grant writer, from my perspective, and especially when we're looking at the inflation reduction, like we're just in right now in a historic time that money is going directly to cities. And I would say I've never been to an NLC conference the way that this one was set up, where they had administration, had every single agency there with people talking to the cities, because they want the money to go directly to cities where they've hired mayors and they've hired people that work in local governments to have money funneled directly into it. I'm not saying all of it does,
Mhm.
because there's some of them that have capacity issues, but they are trying to do that. So, I keep sipping out little emails because I get ones from the environmental, but we're also looking at our, there's one that's specifically about green buildings, which is what we know is the biggest impact for what we can make on climate action plan. There's also ones for drinking water infrastructure, which we're looking at right now. So I just think there's real things that we have need for, that a grant writer that is technical, especially with infrastructure conversations, climate change conversations, and not just climate change, but resiliency conversations, because as we look at the climate change, we also look at living here on a river near the fires and the rest. So how do we stay resilient as well? Those were.
And
there's
on
something-
the advocacy side, going back to that, we mentioned earmarks. We've gotten that 5-day shocker email that's from like Selena's office. Hey, you got projects to extend? Where if we had someone who's on the Hill, we would know that's coming. We
Right.
have the projects queued up, and then we submit them. Someone's advocating for them. That was half the battle. Because when I've met with Congresswoman Salinas last few times, all she talks about is Tigard project, because Tigard has someone advocating for the Hall project, all this other stuff, because someone's chirping in the ear about the projects for Tigard. And now Sherwood's going way more aggressively. So we just have someone that, on the Hill chirping, giving us what we can, what we need to send, what format, all that good stuff. And then they work it.
And the same with the NLC with the grant writer, like we get these, they drop these competitive grants, and then you have to turn it around in so much time. I know it takes time to manage grants, so it's just like, especially with how can we increase even more what we're doing, like with the parks bond, we wanted a $50 million bond, with a $25 million bond, if there are ways that we can utilize for that. And the rest of it, but the infrastructure conversation, I think, is really important.
And the lobbyists would not just be hitting Congress people and senators, they'd be hitting heads of lobbying them too, so.
And one of the things too, that, the mayor got excited about when we were out there too, is even just being in charging, because we already have the land with parks and with our own parking lots. And so we could get a lot of funding. We have that phase 2 of our climate action plan that would easily fit into one of the funding buckets that they talked about with the Inflation Reduction Act. So there was so much that felt like, oh, that's us. Oh, that's us. So, you know, it just felt very, and I haven't had that kind of sense before I mean, we just, and what they were saying over and over again is it's a historic, once in a lifetime kind of opportunity right now with these particular federal packages. And so, it's not like this is gonna last forever, but if we can do it well, it might be something that some more money keeps coming to cities, towns, and villages instead of always just these big disbursements. Above.
Any other? Anybody over here have a thoughts or scope or thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Well, I can't think of anything else to
I
throw out there.
appreciate the information being shared, and my only thought about getting money coming in is understanding that then there's people who, you know, it changes the workload on the other side. And as a person who manages grants and not just writes them, but manages them as far as reporting and all that, I think we just have to balance then, which can be written into a grant. I'm not in any way suggesting this is, I'm just saying that we just have to remember the balance. That's all I'm saying.
Right, grants with capacity in mind, and I just don't imagine that this city's ever. I just have a-
It's right there in the beginning, at the top of our heads, yes.
It can be.
The big first 5 years,
Same.
5 years since we've had, it starts going down.
Okay.
But
It's like now,
it's now for these next 5 years. Crap.
Okay.
And, you know, the call yesterday about EV charging, one of the advantages if you were in early and had lobbyists and extra stuff, well, it was the amount of competition is low, especially for EV charging, because it's closing in the end of May for this first round. And not many people have their act together yet. They said the next round's gonna be more challenging. You're gonna have production with it. So as we go, we're probably not gonna meet any deadline by the end of May. We'll have to wait for the next cycle, so that gives us time to get all this stuff.
You're talking about legislative advocacy, you've been, bringing up items where we're getting funds, but are we also talking about like going to the state and saying, with this new climate action thing, we have these concerns that are really with their city, because that's a cost too.
I mean,
Okay.
we have to,
Yeah.
in Salem, would be, you know, advocating for things, or against things. Obviously coming down the pipe that would hurt the city with
Yeah, to
tax
keep
revenue or programs that are burdensome. Or there's something that would enhance our industrial zone, you know, basically lining up with, League of Oregon Cities and some other folks, whether we support or, you know, or against certain bills, or if you have, have Jules Walters introduce bills on our behalf.
I think to your point too, like, one of the things the mayor was talking about with the EV charging, for instance, we collaborated with other cities.
Right.
And then you have an advocate, you also, you come in there with, we've been working together with them, you know, it just helps with being a little bit bigger.
3 different what?
Well, two, the CFM.
Oh,
I agree. But you have triple double. Yeah.
It's been helpful. Thank you.
I think we have enough then to,
I think
Well,
so.
we'll continue looking at doing the research on it. We're proposing to put some money in on using one-time dollars to see what this would look like, what that first year would be, and then determine whether it's an ongoing or a one-time continuum. But anything we put in the budget this next year would be utilizing one-time dollars. Speaking of one-time and ongoing, I don't want you to see it. Wait a minute. No, I'm just kidding.
The red, why is the red one above the blue one?
23-24 that the alignment is what we call a negative ongoing alignment. Our ongoing revenues are higher than our ongoing expenditure. Now, that is it is at that level as we go into this right now, but it's a comfort. I think you've all heard me talk about a comfortable ongoing alignment. This is in that comfort stage. We also know that I've got a piece of an ongoing revenue that we're gonna see probably for 1 year be at a much lower rate. And I'll talk about that more at the budget committee. But so we'll use some one-time dollars to make that up in this year. So, and that's baked into this projection. So those lines would look a little differently without that in place. But we also know, so when I talk a comfort level, we know that we typically bring in more revenue and we don't spend 100% of our budgets. So what is that comfort level? So as I've looked at these numbers, yes, you see the red line higher than the blue line, but it's not in a position that I have any concerns about. It's within that comfort gap that we're going to be looking at a little bit more. We're going to look at that more going forward because we also know that that is getting tighter. Those lines have gotten tighter over the last couple of years, and that's the reality of the world. But it's manageable. We're in a good position. We're feeling really good going into the budget, even with that picture. But what does this mean? We are in a comfort.
Go back for just a second. I just want to, I said this at our budget kickoff, that we all are aware of other jurisdictions that are going through cuts and that have pretty big structural deficits, not just for this year, but for ongoing years, for several years into the future. And there's rumors swirling around about at least one jurisdiction doing layoffs. And we've talked like, what's the difference in Tualatin? And while we have a small negative alignment in this coming year, Dawn, who is, I feel like a master at our budget process and understanding our financial picture. If he feels comfortable with it, then I feel comfortable with it. I have a high level of trust in Dawn's capability. And I really think that one of the differences between Tualatin and other cities is that we have used this fiscal health model for 12 years now, 10 years, where we've said, we're only going to add ongoing expenses paying with those ongoing dollars that we know about. But so we're not going to use our savings account to add ongoing expenses. And sometimes that's really hard, right? Like we want to add expenses and we don't have the revenue to support it. And we have to make hard decisions. But I truly believe that because we've been using this model for the past 10 years, that we're not in that position of this structural deficit that we're looking at having to do pretty significant cuts that other jurisdictions are looking at. So sometimes that means making hard decisions, having hard conversations, but I'd rather be in this position than those other positions any day of the week. So anyway.
In the past, this line is pretty much the same when I was serving under Mayor Ogden. It was the same thing. We always in the future were going to go negative and through Lou transition to means we haven't. But it was always that same kind of picture of these 12 years I've been doing this.
Yeah, I mean, your outer years are always gonna, because you've got a bunch of assumptions in and things change. Yeah. And you have to be conservative. We have to budget 100% of personnel, even if when we have openings, because hopefully we will be fully staffed and we have to have the money available to do that. We know that we need to maintain the parks and we know what it takes that. Well, maybe that 1 year we don't have to spend as much to maintain them, but or maybe the capacity is we don't do 100% of everything we're planning for, but we have to plan for that. So we know that those things happen. And those outer years do look different, and there's no other way but that's gonna look that way unless, you know, we start with ongoing revenues here and ongoing expenditures here, and that's not the reality of the world. And also the assumptions that I put in this model are conservative. And that's,
Appreciated that you always err to the conservative, so more often than not, we're pleasantly surprised, and if not, we're right where we should be, so instead of having expectations beyond what comes in.
and we are gonna look, and Cheryl and I've had this conversation this year, looking at, yes, we still need to be conservative, but because like this comfortable negative alignment, it's because we have that conservativeness. And are we being too conservative? Where's that line? And that's, now we're in a period that doing that analysis more is gonna be more important to us. And so we will be looking at that. And that's kind of going forward, but we don't have that structural imbalance that some other cities do. We've got a good structure in place and we're managing our budgets. So I'm in a very comfort level going into this. Does it make me more nervous than in past years? Yeah, but I still feel confident and comfortable sitting up here today. We are going to need to manage our revenue and expenditure growth a little bit. And again, we're going to define it. And we need to water our money tree. And that is actually a money tree in my office. Sherilyn, about 6 months or so ago, walked into my office with a money tree as a gift. And it is growing in my office. It is, every now and then I see a leaf come off of it or kind of getting dry. And I'm like, oh, but I see a lot more green new growth going. So I have a good comfort level of that I can. Yes, I did actually eat those too. They weren't just in the picture just to make it look like I'm eat healthy. I know I was looking at some of the things that were in that picture. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have cleaned that around. But I took it for a budget meeting, and anyway, it is a money tree. I am watering it. It is got some new growth, and we're hoping that continues to be something that flourishes, and we still stay with a good structure and a good financial position. But it's, you know, I say this frequently, it's thankful to all of you when we bring budget questions to you, or policy decisions, or things we want to add, or why we're adding or not adding. I feel we get great guidance from this body. And you know, I can never say enough about the departments and the work that they do in managing their budgets, coming to us with requests that are reasonable. And, you know, I know some of these cities that I talk to have people that they have these deficits, and departments are still asking for adding 3 positions or adding this and adding that. It's like, well, what part of the structural deficit it's hard to get? I don't have that from the people here. They support our position. They support the importance of it. They do a great job with what they do, and they come to us with solid solutions. And if there's something they really need, a lot of times they're looking at how can they do things differently to get what they need. They don't just walk in and say, I need this. What are you going to do for me? And it's in my 15 years here, that's much appreciated, because that's not what happens in a lot of other cities around us. At that, I'll be more than happy to answer questions. He doesn't want any more questions. I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions, comments, or concerns you have.
When you were just talking about the staffing, and that's gotta be a delicate balance though, because I'm sure every department could use more staff.
Oh, yeah. It is, you could probably look at almost anybody in this room, and if we said, yes, we had an endless amount of money, what do you need? We get a lot of staffing requests, and rightfully so. I get it. We have a low tax rate, we're lean, and, you know, we do a lot of great stuff with what we have, but we are a lean city. That's the reality.
Just talking today to a department head about like stress levels and job capacity and workloads are just really high in lots of departments. And, you know, would additional staff help that? Yeah. But, you know, we are where we are.
I would love to, if
Right.
you get a new employee and you get a new employee, but, you know, I have to manage with what we got. And these people do a great job of it.
And there's a budget for the mayor and council. Who decides that, or how's that different?
That's handled in Sherilyn's department, and that's how that's put together with feedback, I believe, yes.
As we're looking back at that line, the red and the blue line, with the conversation with, Mayor just bringing up around the county anticipating shortfalls, do we have any, I know they're doing their presentation coming up, like we don't have specifics yet, but I'm just curious if we are anticipating an impact from that directly financially, and how that affects our thinking around our, I trust you. If you say it's okay, it's okay, but I'm just curious about the county.
So a couple of things. One, the library. So we get library money. Well, WCCLS, Washington County Cooperative Library Services, funds approximately 70% of our library and of our library budget. And of that, a third of it is a levy that is specific to that. And then the other 2/3 is coming from their general fund. So that is a concern. Their budget's not going to drop until April 24th, 27. So we are watching with bated breath on that. I believe that we've been conservative. We're not budgeting a cut, I don't believe, in those
We
revenues.
have not built any growth into it. We have the same level. We budgeted so far the same level of what we got this year. We are hopeful that we don't, I mean, the likelihood is we're not going to get what we've gotten in the past growth rate, but we're hoping that it is something. We just don't know what it is. We're not building in a reduction, but we haven't built in any increase yet. So once.
Yeah, for sure. We will. The second impact is on police and law enforcement. And that's not a direct impact other than jail or, and we've heard a little bit about, from the sheriff about their situation. So it's an indirect impact, but it's not like they're cutting, well, I think it's a pretty indirect impact, but it's definitely there. The third one that I can think of is like their building fees and their development fees that when we do projects, we have to pay. So our capital projects, if it's associated with Washington County at all, we have to pay those fees, and those just went up by like 50%. Right, they just did a major increase in their building fees, and so that can impact our budget, not as a cut, but we have to factor that in our capital projects. Can't think of others. Transportation.
Transportation project might take a lot longer.
Yeah. Right, so like if it's funded through Washington County MISTIP, that's extended much longer.
I think the biggest piece where we'll see on a monetary side will probably be the library.
Mhm.
As I said, the numbers that you see on that graph have no increase in the library.
Chair Harrington sent out an invitation to all the mayors for their budget meetings. Yeah.
Are you gonna go?
Oh, yeah, there should be popcorn and stuff like that. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, the budget thing, and they haven't done reception before, so.
Yeah, I think we use some money to.
Bring your own. They'll supply the microwave. You bring the microwave popcorn.
Here you go.
Well, and another thing I would say about Washington County that we found out that I'm proud of us is our master planning and our foresight, like for our IT, our infrastructure. So when Bates came in, he put into place like this strategic plan, and Washington County is just now putting their CIP together, the first one ever, and they have like a $60 million hole that they're trying to fill for like infrastructure projects, IT related. And we've invested, and sometimes that's been really hard decisions, but investing in our IT infrastructure has really paid off, because now like they're gonna have to find that money somehow. I don't know how they're gonna find it.
Okay. More than attrition.
Sorry, I was having a conversation over here, but I was at a Tiger Walden School District budget meeting yesterday, and they're gonna have a really tough time this year. They're significantly down by 1,100 students, which obviously impacts the bottom line on what they're gonna be receiving, 'cause I guess we're all after the same dollars. So I'm wondering what that effect may have on the cities that service that school as well for funding.
They're funded significantly different
Yeah.
than we are, so that where their budgets are based upon, their state funding is based upon pupil count.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't impact us. We don't see, I can't think of a lot of areas in our budget that they lean on us for backfilling any of their funding. So I don't think it has any, but definitely not the way they're funded. Pupil count is significantly impacts for them.
Yeah.
Because of their state funding formula. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, if it turns out that, the library gets like significantly less than they need, will the budget be adjusted to help our budget? How would that work? Because we have to have a certain level of.
Obviously, the budget's put together with the same standard of funding coming from the county. If that were reduced significantly, we would have to figure out where that balance is and what it looks like. Or is it an ongoing thing? Would it be a one-time, if the county came to us and said, well, it's a one-time cut, we use one-time monies to fill for that year. So I don't think we're hearing anything that's.
Okay, good. It's more a question of, will we receive the same amount next year as this year, or will they be a little bit?
Okay, so it's just kind of like you're not.
Yeah, what, WCCOS is really trying to prioritize allocation. But they also, as a county department, are facing potential. I think in terms of the revenue we receive, I'm not concerned about.
2 years left in the bond, Joanne?
This will be going into year 3.
They're starting to rev up that. They had to revamp the whole thing.
We're not anticipating that being an impact to us. I mean, if anything, not the library, but if anything were happening, then we'd look at how that we'd balance that, but we're not seeing anything that would have an impact beyond. I can almost say, I can say with full confidence that we won't. Anything, I wouldn't be coming to them on May 8th with any significant changes. So I'm really comfortable there's nothing between now and May. I don't even think there's anything between now and the end of June. But I think we've got things programmed in really well, confident levels with what's going in. Anything else? I actually kept you here longer than I thought. So
What was your favorite budget song?
my favorite budget song.
Yeah, well, you.
Now that I've had play music in
No
my
to
office
adjourn.
today, I really had the music going to. Yeah, it had that, I didn't have any money songs going, I don't think. So, but anyway, all right, well, thank you. I think we're adjourned, Mayor. Or is that-
Bye, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Sherilyn, and everyone.